Story 1. I think society urgently needs more open and honest conversations about mental health, but there is still a lot of stigma and reluctance to address it. Many people feel uncomfortable discussing their struggles or seeking help because of the fear of being judged or misunderstood. We need to break down those barriers and create a more supportive environment where mental health is treated with the same importance as physical health. It is crucial for our overall well-being, yet it is something many people are still hesitant to fully embrace. Story 2. Tech from a few decades ago. People keep reinventing worse versions of things that are older than themselves. If they learned that it has already been done and made small improvements, everyone would be better off. Story 3. A healthier diet. The foods that line most of the grocery store shelves are full of chemicals and additives that are terrible for our bodies. They cause medical issues both short-term and long-term. Story 4. To stop rewarding unpleasant people across the spectrum, from family and neighbors up to the top. People don't want to rock the boat, so they put up with and act as though the person is nice, all the while understanding they steal or worse. Story 5. To get off their phones and go outside. Stop seeing the world through others' eyes and see it yourself. It's really not as bad as social media and the news make it out to be. Story 6. We need real medical and financial support for our veterans. I know people want it, but we need to be demanding action until someone does something. I'm not a veteran. I am not related to a veteran, but I deeply respect someone who will stand there with bullets whizzing past them to fight for our freedom. Story 7. Apart from the obvious, I would say dirt. Simply dirt from the stable that accumulates when handling animals. Since I have been with my horse every day, I have simply been healthy. Before, I was often ill, but the exercise, fresh air, and all the dirt have made my immune system really strong. Story 8. Timeout and a reality check. Shut off your cable news. Take an honest look at your community and the real problems it has. Then look at who is actively trying to help instead of the loudest voices in the room. Story 9. There's an idea held by doomsday preppers and anarchists. I'm not subscribing to it, but I'm beginning to see it as inevitable. We, the United States, need this uniparty government to fail and fail hard. Story 10. In the United States, there is aggressive enforcement of laws and regulations. There is no more self-policing or self-inspection for the food industry, and there are adequate health, fire, and housing inspection services, with regular hands-on auditing of health insurance practices. If you defund enforcement, your regulatory environment doesn't actually exist. Story 11. Free hugs. Hugs are severely underrated these days, in my opinion. They cost nothing and really help people with their mental health struggles, which seems to affect 50% of humanity at the moment. Story 12. To slow things down. The world is rushing headlong into catastrophe because we need more, better, faster. Now, we're still toddlers at the species level. Story 13. Empathy, self-respect, and respect for others. We need to move on to another phase, hopefully positive, from the bubble life and the world being all about me. Story 14. Universal medical insurance, including dental and mental health coverage. I am not talking about the government taking over all hospitals and doctors' offices. I am talking about the insurance side. Use tax dollars to provide every legal resident of the United States with medical coverage that is accepted at every medical office and facility for covered services. Let the hospitals, doctors' offices, and other medical facilities operate as a mix of public, private, for-profit, and non-profit organizations as decided by the needs and desires of the region. Story 15. Easy access to affordable housing, stable employment, and retirement pensions. Yes, I know that sounds like socialism, but we live in a hyper-capitalist, dog-eat-dog dystopia where people's basic needs aren't being met and should be. Yes, it's also a problem in Europe. Story 16. Data privacy is heavily regulated by laws such as General Data Protection Regulation and California Consumer Privacy Act, alongside actions against third-party data brokers trading personal, health, and tracking information. However, many individuals appear unaware of these measures. Story 17. 4-day work weeks. Europe does it, and they are successful. Why can't the United States take a clue and start instituting more jobs like this? It would make people feel more refreshed with 3 days off. Story 18. I think society urgently needs more empathy and understanding, but a lot of people resist it. It's tough to make real progress when everyone is so entrenched in their own perspectives, and sometimes it feels easier to just stay in our comfort zones rather than trying to see things from someone else's perspective. But without more empathy, a lot of the bigger issues like inequality, division, and even climate change will keep getting worse. Story 19. Free healthcare. It is possible, it is needed, but somehow not wanted. If so, people would have voted for it a long time ago. It just does not make any sense, especially in the United States, where people are being scammed so badly by health insurance companies. Story 20. To have some adult conversations about several issues, particularly about immigration. It's such a divisive issue that politicians and media used to wind people up and blame for all our woes. Yet the same politicians rely heavily on migration to drive economic growth and fill skill shortages, but at the same time, it is used to suppress wages and feed the failing capitalist machine. Both sides of the political spectrum twist the truth and either push hate or downplay some of the positives or negatives to suit their interests. It would be great if there could be some sort of open, honest debate about this issue rather than screaming harpies on all sides. I think if you look around the developed world, this is a hugely divisive issue. Story 21. Regulation of free speech, regulation of guns, public health care. 3 things that every other modern nation has, yet America thinks the sky will fall and reality will collapse in on itself if we get rid of any of those things. Story 22. In the United States, I would say density. Our country is far too spread out to be sustainable. A huge portion of what people complain about is the direct result of detached single-family homes, but they don't want to admit it. Lack of transit, poor roads, traffic, and high housing costs. Story 23. Take the stigma away from the term socialism. Capitalism does work, but the model is broken. We are off the rails with a safety net available for only the upper 1%. It is not sustainable. Story 24. A big rude awakening, also known as a reset, if you will. The way things are looking now, that will be in the very near future, and it's been long overdue talking about the Western world. Story 25. A hard reset of social media and controls on posting. We would be much better off without influencers, extremist media, and allowing any so-called expert to spread their dangerous beliefs and theories for anyone to hear. Easy access to information is great, but it's when people just scroll social media for their news and information that things go wrong and we end up with leaders who are not suitable for their roles. Story 26. Stop and take a step back. We have never done this. Everything is push forward, we'll figure it out. Well, that isn't working anymore. I know we won't do it because that would mean the rich and powerful would have to not take as much, and let's face it, the rich are going to stay rich no matter what, but it really needs to happen. Story 27. Self-awareness, accountability, emotional regulation skills. Finding a balance of consumption that does not revolve around consuming more. Story 28. Estimates put the amount of oil left to extract from proven oil reserves at about 1.7 trillion barrels. Global consumption right now is about 100 million barrels per day. Assuming no change in consumption, that puts us at only 46 years until the total collapse of the modern economy. This is assuming no increase in consumption, which is unlikely to say the least. In addition, that 46 years is the span of time left until zero oil. There's a whole lot of pain to be felt between here and there. Basically, we're at the end of the fossil fuel era right now, and why it is ending has nothing to do with climate change. We're simply running out. We're going to burn it all, and if we don't use the last bit of it to build alternative energy, society will likely never develop to this level again. Energy is at the center of all the progress made, and we're in the final decades of getting the stuff cheap and easy. Story 29. Understanding everyone's individual and unique existence in psychology, not to mention the whole upbringing aspect and therefore perspective, really valuing differing perspectives, and meeting various mind archetypes to collaborate and succeed with, is such a better outlook on life. I see so many that if you don't act like the crowd, you're an outsider. And that's sad. Don't encourage groupthink. Story 30. To stop our insane dependence on fossil fuels, Eventually, whatever life is left on this burned-up planet is going to think we're as stupid as people in the 1800s who thought they couldn't survive without whale oil or hunting bison to extinction for their tongues. Story 31. Consumer duty is applied across all sectors. It is a United Kingdom financial regulation that means you have to, as a guiding principle, recognize that humans are humans and design products and sales systems that cater to that. I honestly think it would eliminate so much unnecessary complexity overnight. Story 32. 90% of the self-serve storage units worldwide are in the United States. Americans seem to be the only ones who buy or hold onto more than can fit in their houses. Story 33. Normalcy. All this other stuff is just background noise. People are so afraid to speak the truth nowadays that everything slides and goes unnoticed when it is wrong. Story 34. Sleep. And I mean that in terms of society as a whole. Both industries and demand for labor do not want sleep, because it's wrongly believed to reduce productivity. In reality, more accidents and losses occur from errors made by sleep-deprived individuals. Society would benefit greatly if people could get more sleep, either through having fewer workdays per week or fixing schedules so that every worker got enough sleep before, during, and after their shifts. At least in the United States, it shouldn't be limited to kindergarten and never again. Make America nap again. Story 35. In my country, Canada, there are fewer regulations for sure. We're competing with Trump's America, and we need our economy to be much more attractive than it currently is. Otherwise, we won't be able to fund our generous social programs. Many people just think taxing the rich will do it. I'm convinced it won't. Not until every single country cooperates fiscally. Story 36. A throat punch. We have become so apathetic and so easily manipulated into tearing each other down and being divided by ghoulish social media using obnoxious individuals. We need to start fighting for each other instead of fighting each other. Story 37. An adult in power would make it boring and take the intrigue, performance, and theater out of politics. Imagine no career politicians who are working only to win votes for the next election, or the lack of catchy phrases to sound cool, no matter their true intention or substance. Story 38. Critical thinking skills are essential. Everyone has become numb to information and easily accepts what they hear or read without considering who is saying it, their motivation, and what they benefit from it. Some simply regurgitate the same information to others. Society in general also needs to check its ego. Narcissism has become a normal personality trait that many people grow into, and it is just getting worse. However, I think the Paul versus Tyson fight was an eye-opener, showing that these social media individuals are nothing but narcissistic con artists. Story 39. The acceptance that financial incentives to sterilize oneself is doing oneself and society a favor if they would be unable or unwilling to put in the work of raising a child properly. Story 40. To stop taking joy directly from the unhappiness of others. It encourages people to make others suffer for their pleasure instead of it being a potential side effect of something that makes them happy. Story 41. In my opinion, society needs to stop spreading taboos and myths about periods. They should start respecting women and take care of them during their hard times. Story 42. Moderation and return to the center. Everything is always an extreme now, just like this last sentence. It is much more correct to say that many things are expressed as extremes. Even the average isn't enough for many. We're often talking about the most average thing ever. Most opinions really need to be toned down. Story 43. We either adopt a worldwide socialist economy or we all die when we make the planet unlivable for humans. Capitalism is incompatible with long-term prosperity. It is only concerned with short-term profits above people and the planet. Story 44. Genetically modified parthenogenetic velociraptors, the turkey-sized in real-life kind, that are cued to specifically hunt distracted people on their phones and people with no situational awareness in general. Story 45. To grow a spine and stop saying it's okay and normal to pretend to be a cat or dog or a they. You are an individual, singular. If you really believe you are a they, then you need help. Story 46. Eugenics genetic engineered humans. Imagine a world in which there are no heritable diseases. One where no woman is born with a faulty breast cancer gene 1 or breast cancer gene 2. One with no muscular dystrophy, no Down syndrome, no cystic fibrosis, no scoliosis, no bad teeth, no male pattern baldness, no endometriosis. Story 47. More awareness about how everything we use and interact with may alter our decision-making processes and harm our health physically and mentally. Story 48. In the United States, socialized medicine and a better social safety net are necessary. However, because billionaires exist, we must bow down to them. They bought their way into ownership of America. Next, a crash and cash extraction. Then, removal and a rebuild. Story 49. The acceptance of public cranking. When you have to crank it, you have to crank it. That's the reality, and society needs to get with the times and accept this. Who is with me? Story 50. Patience, the need for instant results makes us impatient. We need to raise corporate tax rates by 30%. Not for small businesses, not for mom and pop shops, but for companies like Amazon, Walmart, Chevron, Mattel, AT&T, Meta, Tesla, and so on. Story 51. We need men to embrace feminism, but because it wasn't created by men for men, they get defensive about a lot of the language used and the way things are discussed. Basically, the system we find ourselves in forces men to work an excessive amount so the value they produce can be appropriated by their employers, mostly rich men, hence the term patriarchy. One way they can be compelled to work an unhealthy amount is through societal expectations and pressures. Many aspects of traditional masculinity pressure men to be good employees. A man should always be working hard, finding solutions, making himself useful, being strong so he can produce value for others and not require anything from them, being stoic, reliable, capable, and so on. All these are attributes of an ideal employee and also causes of many issues affecting men, such as suppressing emotions, not going to the doctor, not asking for or accepting help, and lacking an identity outside of work. Other aspects of traditional masculinity support these pressures to be a good worker. Why is traditional masculinity so homophobic? Why is it so important for everyone to perform heterosexuality? Traditionally, women were historically denied employment and the ability to support themselves, so they needed a man to provide for them, which acted as an incentive for men to make more money, essentially to be better employees. This has relaxed a bit because it turns out women and LGBTQ+ individuals can also be exploited as workers in the short term, but with declining birth rates, we're seeing a well-funded campaign to convince men that their problems are due to women's rights and that we need to return to traditional values by reducing women to baby makers again. Hopefully, this makes it clearer why rich people ally with social conservatives. Traditional values greatly benefit them economically. And why is it so important to reproduce? So you have a family to provide for, are locked into working for decades, and can be coerced into a worse employment situation, which is also why health insurance is tied to employment in the United States, and to raise the next generation of workers with these same values. Many persistent social problems pressure men into being good workers. Society has enough resources that there is actually no need for anyone to be homeless. But homeless men, who are overrepresented among homeless people, serve as a stark reminder to other men of what will happen to them if they don't meet society's expectations and aren't good enough employees, because housing is tied to employment. Employment is tied to housing to make it very hard to escape homelessness, so men will do everything they can to avoid it. This is also why transgender women are being targeted so aggressively recently. Even the perception that it's possible to opt out of the male worker gender role and not be shunned by society is dangerous because it makes men realize, maybe I don't have to live like this. A significant issue facing transgender people is employment discrimination. Anyways, the current system, referred to as patriarchy, severely disadvantages men and allows rich men to exploit their fellow human beings. In this sense, men really are made to work tirelessly.